is one who understands that politics.
We are joining the Bernie Sanders campaign live in Appleton, Wisconsin. The opening speaker is starting right now. Hi, everybody.
Enthusiasm for us to pick up and carry across this state and the nation and bring on that revolution, because we have Bernie Sanders.
That happens about 50% of the time. So it's... let me begin by thanking Dylan Kitts, and let me especially thank former Lieutenant Governor Barbara Lawton for that wonderful introduction. But mostly, let me thank all of you for coming out. This is an incredible turnout. And you should all know, not only do we have folks filling up this beautiful theater, we got a bunch of folks in the overflow room, we have more people outside. So thank you all very much for coming out tonight. Let me start off by talking a little bit about what political momentum means. Last Saturday, there were 3 state caucuses held. We won Washington with 72% of the vote. Alaska with 82% of the vote. And Hawaii with 70% of the vote. And we have won 6 out of the last 7 elections, often by landslide victories. That's called momentum. In the last 2 weeks, we have cut Hillary Clinton's pledged delegate lead by 1/3. And what momentum is about is that since we began this campaign and have been drawing just incredible turnouts, we have spoken to close to 1 million people in states throughout this country. And what momentum is about is seeing young people by the millions getting involved in the political process. You know, we have been told by the establishment and by the corporate media that young people really are not very interested in politics or in government or about the future of this country. That is not what I am seeing. I am seeing young people by the millions beginning to stand up They understand that they are the future of this country, and they are determined to help shape that future. And what momentum is about is that in poll after poll, we are defeating Donald Trump by double-digit numbers. fact, the last CNN poll had us ahead of him by 20 points, and state polls have us ahead of him by equally large numbers all over this country. Now, we are doing well in this campaign, defying all of the expectations. You know, when we began, we were at about 3% in the polls, 60, 70 points behind Hillary Clinton. Last national poll had us 1 point ahead of Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, the feed just died. Hopefully it'll kick back in. We have another one. Give me a second. Okay, apparently Action 2 is just gone. Sorry, everybody.
We do that, we can address them, we can resolve them. And let me give you some of the issues.
I'm going to switch over to Bernie Sanders' speeches and events for this. Thank you, guys.
But they are real. Number one, people in our country, and we know them all, our veterans have fought and in some cases died to protect American democracy, and we owe them a huge debt of gratitude. Now, democracy and yet here is not a complicated idea. The truth is that today, what democracy is about is you get a vote, and you get a vote, and you get a vote. You could vote for me, you could vote against me, but it's one person, one vote. Majority rules. What we have today is a system in which billionaires are able to buy elections, a system in which the Koch brothers and a handful of other billionaires will be spending some $900 million in this campaign cycle in order to elect candidates who will represent the wealthy and the powerful. That is not democracy, that is oligarchy. We will not accept that. But it is not only big money buying elections. All of you know that the path toward democracy, which this country has gone through over the past several hundred years, has been a difficult and in some ways torturous path. We started off with African Americans being held in slavery, obviously not voting, women not voting, poor whites not voting, and the struggle for our American democracy was to expand the right to vote, to bring more people into the political process regardless of their color, regardless of their sex, regardless of their income. But yet in recent years, as a result of a very bad Supreme Court decision gutting the Voting Rights Act, what we have seen is governors in Wisconsin and around this country making it harder for people to participate in the political process. That is wrong. And we all know what that effort is about. It's not dealing with voter fraud. What it is dealing with is the reality that these Republican governors are trying to make it impossible for lower-income people, people of color, young people, older people who might vote against them to participate in the democratic election process. And I say to those governors, if you don't have the guts to participate in free and fair elections, get another job, get out of politics. You know, I have been involved in a lot of elections in my state of Vermont, and honest to God, it has never occurred to me for 1 second to figure out a way to make it harder for people who might vote against me to participate in an election. It is absolutely un-American, and I will tell you this. And I will tell you this, that if elected President of the United States, we're going to take on the Scott Walkers and all of these people. We are going to make it easier for people to participate in the political process, not harder. We are also aware that in America today, we have one of the lowest voter turnout rates of any major country on earth. Our job has got to move us to one of the highest voter turnout rates of any country. Bottom line is that in America, if you are 18 years of age or older, you are registered to vote, and we're going to make that happen. But it's not only a corrupt campaign finance system and Republican efforts to suppress the vote. We have got to address, and what our campaign is doing, is taking a very hard look at the grotesque level of income and wealth inequality in America today and the rigged economy that currently exists. Now, you could be a progressive, you could be a conservative, you can be a moderate. But very few people in this country think that what the American economy is about is having the top 1/10 of 1%, not 1%, 1/10 of 1% owning almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%. Very few people think that it is acceptable or what our economy should look like to have the top 20 people, not a lot of people, owning more wealth than the bottom half of America, 150 million Americans. And let me give you one out of many examples that I could of what a rigged economy looks like. A rigged economy is when you have one family, the Walton family of Walmart, owning more wealth than the bottom 40% of the American people. One family. But here's what makes it even worse. As you all know, Walton family owns Walmart. Walmart pays their employees wages that are so low that many of their employees are forced to go on Medicaid, food stamps, or subsidized housing. That's how they survive. And who pays for those food stamps and Medicaid? The middle class of this country. So what you have is the absurd situation where middle class taxpayers are subsidizing the business of the wealthiest family in America. That's crazy. That's a rigged economy. And together, what we are going to say to the Walton family is get off of welfare, pay your workers a living wage. And when we talk about the issues facing this country, what this campaign is about is urging the American people to think outside of the box, outside of the status quo. Kind of the corporate media wants you to think about here to here. That is not acceptable. Let me give you an example, just another example. Today in America, we have a broken criminal justice system. What does that mean? What it means that we have got to think about it and we have got to change it. We have more people in jail today in America than any other country on earth. More than China, 4 times our size. We're spending $80 billion a year locking up 2.2 million Americans. Now, why is that? Well, there are a lot of reasons for that, but one of them has to do with another issue we don't talk about much, and that is we have outrageously high levels of youth unemployment in this country. For white kids who graduated high school, real unemployment, 33%. For Latino kids, 36%. For African American kids, 51%. You guys ready for a radical idea? All right. Together, we are going to invest in jobs and education, not more jails and incarceration. And by the way, we're going to end private prisons. Corporations should not be making money locking up fellow Americans. And we're going to take a hard look at police departments all over this country. We are all tired of seeing unarmed people being shot and killed by police officers. Now, I've been a mayor, Burlington, Vermont. I was mayor there for 8 years, and I've worked with police departments all over this country. And let me tell you that the vast majority of police officers are honest, hardworking, and have a very, very difficult job to do. But like any other public official, when a police officer breaks the law, that officer must be held accountable. As a nation, we have got to demilitarize local police departments. We have got to make police departments look like the diversity of the communities they serve. And by the way, controversial issue, but this is what I think, we have got to take a hard look at the so-called war on drugs. It turns out that over the last 30 years or so, millions of Americans have been arrested and have police records for possession of marijuana. Turns out that today, under the Federal Controlled Substance Act, marijuana is listed as a Schedule I drug, the highest level, alongside of heroin. Now, people can argue about the pluses and minuses of marijuana, but no sane person thinks marijuana is equivalent to heroin. And that is why I have offered legislation to take marijuana out of the Federal Controlled Substance Act. But when we talk about drugs, we have got to acknowledge in my state, neighboring New Hampshire, and all over this country, we have a very serious problem with opiate addiction and heroin addiction. And in my view, the best way to address that national crisis is to understand that substance abuse and addiction is a health issue, not a criminal issue. We need a revolution in how we do mental health care in this country. When people are addicted, they need care when they need it, not 6 months from now. And by the way, not a pleasant thought, but we have to be honest and understand there are thousands of people walking the streets of our country who are suicidal, who are homicidal. We have got to provide them with the treatment when they need it. This campaign is doing as well as it is because we are not listening to wealthy campaign contributors. We are listening to the American people. And one of the reasons that we can speak to hundreds of thousands of people around this country is I'm not wasting my time going to rich people's homes begging them for their campaign contributions. I'd rather be here with you in Appleton than begging billionaires for their money. And this is one of the real differences of opinion that Secretary Clinton and I have. It's how we have chosen to raise the money we need to run campaigns. What I said at the very beginning of this campaign is that our campaign is not representing Wall Street, corporate America, or the billionaires of this country. We will not have, and we decided early on, not to have a super PAC. Secretary Clinton chose to go in another direction. She has a number of super PACs, including one that in last filing period announced that they had raised $25 million from special interests for the super PAC, including $15 million from Wall Street. As some of you may know, Secretary Clinton has also given speeches on Wall Street for some $225,000 a speech. Now, what I have said is that if you're going to give a speech for $225,000, it's got to be really, don't you think, an extraordinarily brilliant speech? I mean, why else would they pay you that kind of money? And it must be a speech which will open up the eyes of the world, transform our country. Must be a speech written in Shakespearean prose. So I think if it is such a fantastic speech, the Secretary should make it available to all of us. Now, I don't know why, but Wall Street has not invited me to give a speech. Hey, I don't need 225,000. I don't need 2,000. I don't need $2, but I would like to say a few things to some of these guys. And what I would say, it is time to end business as usual on Wall Street. What I would say is that the greed, the recklessness, and illegal behavior of Wall Street drove this country into the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression, and millions of our people have yet to recover from that horrendous recession. What I would say to the people on Wall Street is they were bailed out by Congress, against my vote, I should add, but they were bailed out. They were bailed out because Congress was told that the major banks were too big to fail, that if they failed, they would take half the economy with them. So Congress bailed them out. The Fed made available trillions of dollars of short-term, low-interest loans. Meanwhile, today, many people don't know this, but three out of the four largest banks in this country, who were all bailed out because they were too big to fail, they are bigger today than they were when we bailed them out because they were too big to fail. So I believe that we should do two things with Wall Street. Number one, reestablish Glass-Steagall legislation. And number two, when you have a handful of financial institutions with the kind of economic and political power that they have today, it is time to break them up. This campaign is listening to working people. And what workers are telling me is they can't make it on $8 or $9 an hour, that the minimum wage in Washington of $7.25 an hour is a starvation wage, and that we have got to raise the minimum wage to a living wage, $15 an hour. Now, I understand that your governor here in Wisconsin, Governor Walker, does not agree that we should raise the minimum wage. On the other hand, Governor Brown in California is now moving to raise the minimum wage there, $15 an hour. And that is what I think we should be doing for every state in this country, $15 an hour. In America, if somebody works 40 or 50 hours a week, that person should not be living in poverty. I am tired of seeing in my own state and all over this country, people working 2 or 3 jobs, people working longer and longer hours, just trying to cobble together some income and some health care. In America, if you are working for a living, you deserve a living wage. This campaign is listening to senior citizens and disabled veterans. And what they are telling me is that they and millions of others cannot make it on $11,000 or $12,000 a year Social Security. And you just think about it. You could do the arithmetic as well as I do. Figure out the cost of health care, cost of prescription drugs, cost of keeping your home warm in the winter, cost of transportation. Nobody makes it on $11,000 or $12,000 a year who's 80 or 90 years of age. And unbelievably, in the midst of all of this, you got Republicans out there wanting to cut Social Security. Well, we've got some bad news for them. We are not going to cut Social Security benefits. We are going to raise Social Security benefits. You know, a great nation is not judged by the number of millionaires and billionaires it has. A great nation is judged by how it treats the weakest and most vulnerable people amongst us. And a great nation will be judged on how it treats disabled veterans who are 80 or 90 years of age, and our parents and our grandparents. So we are not going to let the Republicans give tax breaks to billionaires and cut Social Security benefits. We're going to do exactly the opposite. This campaign is listening to young people. And what young people are telling me is, number one, how does it happen that despite an explosion in technology, which is making every worker in this country more productive than the same worker would have been 20 or 30 years ago, how does it happen that the young people today, if we do not change this economy around, will likely have a lower standard of living than their parents? What the American dream is about, and my family experienced this. My father came from Poland without a nickel in his pocket, never made any money. But he worked hard his whole life with the hope that his two sons would do better financially than he did, and that was the case. But now we are faced in a moment in American history where the younger generation may have a lower standard of living than their parents. The jobs that are available to them will pay lower in real inflation-adjusted dollars than their parents. And then secondly, what the young people all over this country are telling me is, hey, everybody told us that we should get all of the education that we should. You told us that in order to make it into the middle class, we needed to go to college. You told us that we were living in a competitive global economy and that we needed to have the best educated workforce in the world, and we did it. We went to college. We went to graduate school. Why then have we left school with $50,000 or $100,000 in debt? Just before I came up here, I had a meeting with some steelworkers, actually, and a woman there told me about a future daughter-in-law of hers, young woman who was trained to become a nurse. Now, we desperately need nurses in this country. She left nursing school $100,000 in debt. I have talked to doctors, young doctors who left medical school, $300,000 in debt, dentists, $400,000 in debt. Young people had to drop out of college after 2 years, $60,000 in debt. We should not be punishing people for getting an education. We should be rewarding people. When this campaign talks about thinking outside of the box, this is what I mean. Just take a deep breath and think about it. Everybody knows that from a human point of view and from a broad economy point of view, we need the best educated workforce in the world, right? That's everybody knows, a no-brainer. Nobody disagrees with that. And yet what we have right now are hundreds of thousands of bright young people, qualified. They can't go to college because their families lack the income. And then we have millions of people who have graduated college deeply, deeply in debt. Now, 50 years ago, you got a high school degree. You were in pretty good shape. Likelihood is you can go out and get yourself a decent job. In many respects, a college degree today is the equivalent of what a high school degree was. The world has changed. The economy has changed, technology has changed, people need more education. And that is why I believe that when we talk about public education today, it is not good enough to simply be talking about first grade through 12th grade. We have got to make public colleges and universities tuition free. And what is revolutionary about this idea is that it will tell every child in Wisconsin, in Vermont, in the 4th grade and in the 6th grade, that if you study hard, if you pay attention to your schoolwork, that you will be able to get a college degree no matter what the income of your family is. That is revolutionary, and that is why we should do that. And we have also got to deal with the fact that millions of people are deeply in debt as a result of student loans. And sometimes they're stuck with interest rates of 6, 8, 10%. And that is why what we have got to do is allow those people to refinance their loans at the lowest interest rates they can find. This campaign is listening to our brothers and sisters in the Latino community. There are 11 million undocumented people in this country. People are living in fear. People are being exploited. People are living in the shadows. In my view, we must pass comprehensive immigration reform and a path toward citizenship. And if Congress does not do its job and pass comprehensive legislation, I will use the executive powers of the presidency to do everything I can. Last month, I was in Flint, Michigan, and I talked to people there behind closed doors and had a discussion that I will never forget as long as I live. And it was a discussion that I could not honestly believe was taking place in the United States of America in the year 2016. I was talking to people whose children were being poisoned by excessive lead in the water, and who were seeing the cognitive capabilities of their children being lowered. Kids who had been bright, good in school, were now in special education. Now, what people in the African American community are asking me is, how does it happen? How does it happen that we can spend trillions of dollars in a war in Iraq that we never should have gotten into, but somehow or another we seem not to have the funds available to rebuild inner cities all over this country? And those folks are right. There is no excuse for the Flint, Michigans of this country. There is no excuse to have public schools in inner cities which are totally inadequate, having unemployment rates of 30 or 40%, housing stock falling apart. We are going to get our priorities right in this country. We are going to invest for the people who need it, not for the people who don't need it. And this campaign, as we go around the country, has been listening to our brothers and sisters in the Native American community. Anybody here who has studied 5 minutes of American history understands that from day one, before this country was a country, the Native American people were lied to, were cheated, and many of the treaties negotiated were abrogated. We owe a debt of gratitude to the Native American people that we can never repay. They are an enormously important part of our culture, and they have, more than any other people, taught us about the environment and the need to be part of nature, not to destroy nature. If elected president, our government will change its relationship to the Native American community in a very big way. I am a member of the U.S. Senate Committee on the Environment. And let me just tell you what the scientists, not only throughout our country but throughout the world, have told me. And that is, the debate over climate change is over. Climate change is real. It is caused by human activity. It is already doing devastating harm in this country and around the world. We have a moral responsibility to leave this planet in a way that is healthy and habitable for future generations. And that means, number one, we have got to work with countries all over the world. This is not just an American problem. We've got to work with China, Russia, India, other countries in taking on the fossil fuel industry, transforming our energy system away from fossil fuel. And by the way, when we do that, and when we move toward energy efficiency and sustainable energies like wind, solar, geothermal, we can, as a nation, create millions of decent-paying jobs. There is one major country on earth that does not guarantee health care to all of its people, and you are living in it. Now, I have been criticized for saying this, so let me say it again. In my view, health care is a right of all people, not a privilege. Now, we have made some progress under the Affordable Care Act. We have done away with this obscenity called pre-existing conditions. Some 17 million Americans now have health insurance who previously did not. And we have done away with discrimination against women in terms of the cost of the premiums they pay. But notwithstanding the gains of the ACA, 29 million people in America today have zero insurance. Many of you are underinsured with large copayments and deductibles, correct? And when people have large deductibles and copayments, you know what happens when they get sick and they don't have any money in their pocket? They don't go to the doctor. And you know what happens when you don't go to the doctor? You get sicker. And the fact is that we lose thousands of people every year in this country because they don't go to the doctor when they should. That's a fact. Now, on top of all of that, you got the drug companies out there who are ripping us off in an unconscionable way. Drug companies are charging us by far the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. Do you want to hear crazy? Crazy is when 1 out of 5 Americans who gets a prescription from his or her doctor cannot afford to fill that prescription. That's crazy. Crazy is when oncologists write the U.S. Congress and say, you know what, we have cancer patients who cannot afford the medicine they need to stay alive. And you know what's also crazy is that last year, the top 3 drug companies in this country made $45 billion in profit. In my view, on top of all of that, we end up spending much, much more per capita than do the people of any other country. We spend almost 3 times more than the British, 50% more than the French, far more than the Canadians for health care. In my view, what we have got to do is move toward a Medicare for all single-payer program. This will be good for the middle class, for workers, for employers. It will save, our plan will save the average middle-class family thousands of dollars a year on their health care costs. Everybody here understands that real change throughout our history never has taken place from the top on down. It has always been from the bottom on up. That's how change. 100 years ago or longer, when workers had no power on the job, when they were being overworked, underpaid, could not fight back, had no legal protection, they came together and they said, you know what? We are going to form a union and we are going to negotiate contracts with our employers. Nobody gave workers unions. They had to stand and fight for those unions. And die for those unions. Over the decades, over hundreds of years, in terms of the struggle for civil rights, in terms of the struggle to end racism and segregation and bigotry in this country, millions of African Americans and their white allies stood together to say that in America we will not tolerate racial discrimination. "100 years ago," people forget about this, 100 years ago, in America, women did not have the right to vote, the right to get the education they wanted, the right to do the jobs they wanted. 100 years ago, no time at all. But what happened is women stood up, fought back, and with their male allies, they went to jail, they went on picket lines, they went on hunger strikes, and they fought and said that in America, women will not be second-class citizens. And that is how change took place. Women stood up by the millions, fought back. If we were in this room, not 100 years ago, but 10 years ago, and somebody jumps up and says, "You know, Bernie, I think that gay marriage will be legal in 50 states in this country," the person next to him would have said, "What are you smoking? You are nuts." Okay? But what happened? Because of the struggle for decades on the part of the gay community and their straight allies, who said simply that in this country people have the right to love each other regardless of their gender, we now have gay marriage being legal in 50 states. And let me give you an even more contemporary example of how real change takes place. If we were sitting here, say 7 years ago, no time at all, somebody jumps up and says, "You know, Bernie, this $7.25 an hour federal minimum wage, it's absurd, it's a starvation wage. We have got to double that minimum wage to $15 an hour." The person next to him would have said, "Double the minimum wage? You're nuts. You can't go from $7.25 to $15 an hour. You know, get real. Live in the real world. Yeah, we can raise it maybe, but you can't double it. Can't happen." But then, you know what happened? What happened is that fast food workers in McDonald's and Burger King and Wendy's and all that place, they went out on strike. They stood up, they fought back, and I was very proud to be on picket lines with them in Washington, D.C. And they mobilized people all over this country, and then Seattle, Washington came forward, $15. San Francisco, Los Angeles, $15. Oregon, $15. State of California, $15. And we will have, and if I'm elected president, it will be sooner than later, $15 an hour for every worker in America. What is my point? My point is that change takes place when people look around them and say, the status quo is not working, we've got to change the status quo. And sometimes the vision that people have, their neighbors and their friends say, "You're crazy, it can't happen. Electing an African American as president of the United States, you're nuts. Gay rights, women's rights. You can't, you know, you're thinking too big. Become more conservative." And what is happening now is I think all over this country, people are beginning to stand up and they're looking around them. And they're saying, how does it happen that in America we have a grotesque level of income and wealth inequality? Is it moral? Is it sustainable that so few have so much and so many have so little? People looking around and say, how does it happen that the average guy and the woman in the middle class working longer hours for lower wages? How does it happen that kids are graduating college $50,000, $100,000 in debt? How does it happen that women are making 79 cents on the dollar compared to men? How does it happen that we have more people in jail than any other country on earth? How does it happen that we are the only major country not to provide health care or paid family and medical leave to all of our people? How does it happen? And people are looking around and they're catching on. It is happening because you have a government that represents the wealthy and the powerful, not the middle class and working families. And that is exactly what people are saying. They are saying throughout this country, enough is enough. We need a government that represents all of us, not just a handful of billionaire campaign contributors. I am the only candidate for president who will tell you a very simple truth. And that truth is that no president, not Bernie Sanders or anybody else, can alone do what has to be done for the working families of this country. Just as was the case for the trade union movement, for the civil rights movement, for the women's movement, for the gay movement, for any and every movement that has brought about real change in this country, what we need right now is a political revolution. We need to bring millions of people, many of whom have given up on the political process, young ones who have never participated in the political process, to begin to stand together to demand a government that represents all of us. That is what this campaign is about. And it is a very different campaign than the campaign of someone like Donald Trump. So let me tell you why Donald Trump will not be elected President of the United States. And this I have no doubt about. Donald Trump will not be elected president because the American people do not want a president who insults Mexicans and Latinos, who insults Muslims, who insults women and veterans, who insults the African American community. And remember, don't forget that before he was running for president, Donald Trump was one of the leaders of the so-called birther movement, which was literally a very dangerous concept trying to undermine the legitimacy of President Obama's presidency. Now, you can disagree with President Obama, but it is a very dangerous thing to try to undermine the legitimacy of the President of the United States. And I have found something very interesting in this campaign. President Obama's father was born in Kenya. My father was born in Poland. Interestingly, no one has yet asked me for my birth certificate. Next Tuesday, there's going to be a very, very important primary here in Wisconsin, and you have the opportunity to tell your governor loudly and clearly that his entire agenda is wrong. That we are not going to suppress the vote, we're going to increase voter turnout. We're not going to attack trade unionists, we're going to expand the trade union movement. That we're not going to take money from the Koch brothers, we're going to overturn Citizens United. That we're going to end a set of trade policies which have been disastrous for workers in Wisconsin and around this country. Now, what we have found in this campaign is that we win elections when the voter turnout is high. We lose elections when the voter turnout is low. On Tuesday, let's have a record-breaking turnout. Bring your friends and your neighbors. Thank you all very much.
We'll let it keep going. Hey, everybody. That was Bernie Sanders in Appleton, Wisconsin. Actually, here we go. We're still doing stuff there. He's shaking hands. I thought this was billed as... I saw somebody say this was billed as a town hall and that he might be answering questions, although it doesn't look like they're gearing up to do that right now. And I'll keep an eye on it and see what happens. I don't think that's going to be the case, though. I don't think we're going to see that. Thank you all for being here. This was a quick notice. I know we just left the newsroom and came right to here, and this is going on, but glad we caught it. Thank you to Action 2 News and briefly Bernie Sanders Speeches and Events for bringing us this feed, this nice stream here from Livestream, actually, livestream.com. But yeah, Action 2 News in the Green Bay, Wisconsin area, thank you so much for bringing this. And just a little bit of information, everybody, the hashtag... toned down for what, which I've been running the whole time. We didn't have comment monitors, or we had monitors. We didn't have mods dropping in your quotes this time because this was short notice. But the hashtag toned down for what, for me, has been scrubbed. I don't see it anymore. Oh, look, they're gone. Yeah, let's take this out of there. So other people are saying that they still see it. I'm not seeing it. It doesn't matter. It's still trending. You guys are cranking it out. You're pounding it. As long as we see it, good. If it disappears, I guess we just pick a new hashtag and move on, right? We're just killing it on the web. Absolutely. And there's a couple breaking news. Alan Grayson just picked up some big endorsements. He's just picked up the Democracy for America and Progressive Change Campaign Committee endorsed Rep. Alan Grayson. So those are big endorsements for him right now down in Florida, and he's a Bernie backer. He's a Bernie-crat. So we're excited about that, and I just wanted to drop that piece of information. Also, we had note that Steve Wozniak, Apple, one of the original Apple founders and all-around cool tech guy, has also endorsed Bernie. That was posted on Twitter, basically saying that down on Republicans and Democrats, feel the burn. I think that was his statement. So that's pretty cool. Thank you, Steve Woz, for dropping out. There's lots of people that are now coming out. Everything's shifting. The tide's changing. Even the narrative in establishment media is starting to change as they catch themselves in their own lies and bullshit. And the people are like, come on, guys, come on. It's happening more and more. We need to be very excited about it. This is what it is, folks. It's a political revolution. This one goes to 11. Don't tell us to tune down. We're going to take back our country, you know. So let's go out with happiness. I haven't played it, you know, in at least 48 hours, I know. But let me grab the song, and we'll get out of here. All right? I'll see you in a couple hours. Next broadcast is Bernie in Madison. Let me see where that's at. And hi, everybody. We have like 800 plus people in here. A whole bunch of people. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate it. I see you all. You're having a great conversation there. Thank you. Thank you for being here. We have the best conversation on the net. That's what it's for. Looks like the Milwaukee event is tonight, 5 p.m. my time, 5:30-ish. So 5 p.m. we'll probably go live 5:15-ish. Looks like Bernie starts at 5:30, and that's in Madison, Wisconsin. And those times are my times. All right, so Pacific time, 5:15, 5 o'clock. Look for an event. If you're not subscribed to Bernie 2016 TV, do that. It's the fastest way to know. We sometimes don't know when we're going to go live. So the minute we have a stream, the minute I know, I crank it out. Like I didn't know Appleton was right after I finished the newsroom this morning. So the best way to know what's going on is to subscribe, right? But thank you all for being here. Thank you, comment mods and monitors, for helping with the chat, and everybody in the volunteer group, Bernie 2016 TV and politicalrevolution.tv. You guys make this place work. I sometimes forget to say it, but you humble me with your amazingness. And it's an honor to work with all of you in this political revolution. We are going to take our country back. We are doing it right now. So let's go out with the happy song, and that would be End of the Corporate Age. Because that's what we're ending right now. When people like Susan Sarandon will stand up and go on MSNBC and go, really, Chris Hayes? You really believe that bullshit narrative that you've been spinning? That people like Obama, who take money from the establishment, can actually work to defeat the establishment? People like Obama, who take money from special interests in Wall Street and other places, you really think he's going to be able to fight those industries? You're an idiot. We're awake. America is awake. It's time to take back our country with Bernie Sanders. Feel the burn, everybody. We will see you round 5, my time.
The wealthiest people of this country have seen a tremendous increase in their income, while at the same time, the standard of living of working people and poor people has declined.
CEOs make more than 500 times of what their workers make. The middle class is shrinking.
Poverty is increasing, while at the same time, the people on top are doing phenomenally well.
People always tell me, man, you're wasting your time. Can't you see the monolith is immobile? Yes, I tell them kindly, still I've made up my mind. Cause the sky above's as big and limitless as it ever was. Gather round, people, in the town square. It's the end of the corporate age. There's a new caveat, let the center beware. This is the end of the corporate age. There's no quick and easy remedy that won't end in more calamity.
I mean, this is a fantastic time. From my standpoint, this is the best time that I've ever had.
All the bloviators keep on spreading the meme that there's only so much room at the table, telling us we're lucky to be eating the scraps. But we've got all the facts, and we're taking our places back.
Billionaires shouldn't be allowed to hide in the shadows. Make them step out in the open where the American people can see.
Gather round, people, in the town square. It's the end of the corporate age. There's a new caveat, let the center
government.
There's no quick and easy remedy that won't end in more calamity.
Corporate America, Wall Street, the major campaign donors are so powerful that no president can take them on unless tens of millions of people say, guess what, Washington, you are going to start representing the needs of working families and the middle class, not just the billionaire class. We know what's going on. We are paying attention. Huge